Hi everybody, Pastor Cliff Mansley here at Grace Community Church. So glad that you could tune into this goodness gracious podcast, broadcast, webcast, I don't know, leg cast, arm cast, fish cast, whatever kind of cast, but we're having a lot of fun here as we interview people throughout the church who have interesting stories, and we want you to get to know each other. That's why we're doing Goodness Gracious. This is the first broadcast back after a 4 or 5 year hiatus, and our very first guest is a real special friend of mine. He's a guy who prays for me every day. In fact, he prays for my son every day, who's a police officer, and his name is Sam. So I'm really excited to be able to introduce you to a man whose name is Macho Man. Oh wait, that's one of his nicknames. He's also known as Modern Art. But if you looked at his birth certificate, it would probably say Art Paulsen. So Art, want to welcome you to Goodness Gracious.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, Pastor Cliff.
Now, Art, you can hold that down just a little bit. There you go. That's good. Art, can you tell us a little bit about where in the world you were born?
I was born in Tacoma, Washington, in the same house that my mother was born in.
Is that right?
In the same house. My grandmother was a nurse, and I, for a long time, had the receipt that the doctor who came and helped on the delivery was $45 to deliver me at the time.
So you're a $45 baby?
And
We've never heard of such a thing around here anymore.
And I weighed 10 pounds.
Art, look at yourself. You couldn't have been 10 pounds as a baby.
And my mother was only 4'11".
Wow.
So that was a big baby. My dad thought for sure I'd be playing in the NFL when I was that big, when I was born.
Oh my goodness. So you grew up in the Pacific Northwest.
Tacoma, Washington.
And what did your dad do for a living?
He was in the military for part of it, but the rest of it, he was a truck driver.
A truck driver?
And the local truck driver, not one of the big that go everywhere, but he worked for a company called Pacific Highway Transport.
Did your mom work outside of the home, or were you enough work for her as it was?
She pretty much stayed at home, and we had a small farm and 2 cows that she milked in the morning and did a lot of things. And then later, my dad got into this thing where we had a rabbit farm. And
wow.
He met this guy, and it had a cement. We had 120 rabbits, does, and we had this. He built all these wire cages. They were suspended from the ceiling, had a roof over and a cement walkway down through with a metal cage. You walk down through there and poured feed in that metal cage. And then there was one buck rabbit that did the breeding.
The pleasure was all his.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
And I don't know how my mother did that because there were no computers in those days. But she had to keep track of when the next doe had to, and his name was Pat.
Pat.
So when Pat had to go into cage number 32 or whatever, and she did all that, she was very busy.
So things were really hopping around your place.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm a pastor. I can crack dumb jokes. It's part of my job. But, so Art, you had a great relationship with your grandparents, as I recall. What did your granddad do?
He was a fireman for 25 years in Tacoma, house number 4. And my first trip anywhere was to house number 4 because everybody knew there that my mom was pregnant, and so when I was 3 weeks old, she took me to house number 4 so that all the firemen could see me.
Oh, but they didn't put you in one of those safe baskets where then you would be taken and adopted out, right? It was okay. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And what a cool thing that you would be as a boy. You would have as an example a fireman, a truck driver, obviously a rabbit farmer, which is highly unusual. You got to watch out for Elmer Fudd and guys like that.
Yeah.
And your grandma, what about her?
She had gone to the University of Puget Sound to be a nurse, and she was a nurse. But she didn't ever, she worked for a while, but she did more of doing things for people in the church and stuff. And my grandfather retired after 25 years in being a fireman, and then he was a pastor for 30 years. And
Wow.
I can't remember the seminary right now that he went to become a pastor, but he was a pastor for 30 years.
He and your grandmother had a deep influence on your faith, as I recall.
I'll try to make this short. For people who don't know what World War II was like, they started drafting at age 18, 19, 20, and so on. My dad was 24, married, had 2 children, and my mom was pregnant, and he was drafted. And she was pregnant, and he had to go. And this was to World War II, and he was in Germany. And she had the baby. My little brother already had a name for a good friend of theirs, and he lived 5 days and passed away.
Mm.
And
That's a hard thing for anyone to go through,
Yeah.
especially a mom.
yes.
Mm.
And so we moved. My grandfather had a church in Selwood, Oregon,
I know where that is.
across the river from Portland.
Mhm.
So we moved down there to live with my grandparents.
Were you right on the Willamette River?
No, not right on it. Matter of fact, we were across the street from Bob's Tavern. That's where
Oh.
the church wasn't, but that's where the pastor's, what do you call it? Where the pastor's house was. That was provided by
Right near the tavern, huh?
right across the street. Right across the street.
Hmm.
And I started seminary at age 4. And I had Bible study every day with my grandmother. Bible study every day. And then she had me singing. There was a song called The Holy City. And I asked Michelle one time if she knew that song. It's a really hard song. I sang that song solo in front of the church one time. I don't remember how old I was. I was baptized in that church, and I don't know for sure. I think I was 6, but I'm not positive of that. And when I came up from the baptism, I was laughing a little bit because I wanted to show my grandfather that I wasn't afraid, and he went shh like that because I was trying to show him that I wasn't afraid. And but anyway, and then my grandmother started me on piano lessons because she played the piano, my mom played the piano, and she was doing chords, and I'd look outside and see other kids out there playing, and I finally quit piano lessons. Until this day, I wish I'd never done that. I wish I'd have stayed with it, but I didn't.
So, Art, I've got to ask you, because we only have a short 20-minute period here. I want to ask you, how in the world did you meet your beautiful bride, Betty?
at a and she was on a shelf at a grocery store.
On a shelf at a grocery store. And you picked her right out. First thing.
No, I met her, a friend of hers, after I had my, I was an educator in the Edmond School District, which is the fourth largest school district in the state of Washington.
I know where Edmond is, yeah.
And I met this guy, long story short, who had grown up as apple orchards in eastern Washington. And in 1968, he bought an orchard from his brother, and I went over with him. This is in Chelan. I went over with him many, many times almost, and I learned everything to do, how to prune and all that. And he, a couple of years later, quit teaching and went to be a full-time orchardist again. And I bought an orchard in 1981 and so on and so forth. By the time I retired in 88, I had 5 of them. And one time before that, this friend of hers who taught in the Manson School District of Betty's brought her up to the orchard to meet me. She thought she liked, and that's how we met.
How about that? And
Yeah.
you've been married how many years?
40-something, I don't know.
40-something, you don't know?
No,
I'll bet you've been married longer than 40 years.
I don't know.
You lost count. It's
Yeah.
all been missed and blissed, eh?
Yeah.
Betty does what? She's a,
She has been, when I met her, she had her picture on the cover of a magazine for legal administrators. She was a legal administrator in a law firm in Everett, Washington, and shortly after that, she moved down to Ballard, and I don't know why or how, but she's still
working. Is it the same firm?
yes.
Oh my goodness.
A lot of the those attorneys have left and gone or retired or whatever.
So she breaks in the new ones that come along.
It's not as big as it used to be.
Sure.
But she's still doing
Isn't that
it.
something?
She does all the legal.
Art, how many kids do you have?
We have 2 daughters and a son,
Uh-huh.
and we have, I can't. We have 8 great-grandchildren.
Ah. Do you
We-
spoil them?
No.
Oh, okay, just checking.
Yeah,
Spoken as a true school teacher.
yeah, we do.
Principal even.
And
Weren't you a principal?
No.
Oh, I thought you were a principal.
I was in charge of all kinds. I was in charge of voc ed, special ed, nurses, counselors, hearing impaired, all those things for the whole district.
So you were the administrator in charge of red tape?
Well, it was a big mistake. I went to the University of Arizona and got my master's degree, and 2 of my professors got me in the doctoral program without me even doing it. But what they had in those days was I can't even think of the name of it right now. But if you could go and you get 60% of your salary, but if you didn't come back, you'd have to pay it back.
Oh, yeah,
And
you got to be careful of that.
And I couldn't do that. I told them I got to go back. And they would say, well, we'll give you $4,500 stipend. And so anyway, I went to the University of South Florida in Tampa, started my doctoral program that summer, and then I had to go back. Sabbatical leave, that's what they call it. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to just switch to some other questions. What do you do that helps you with spiritual growth? How does that look for you?
I read 4 devotionals every single morning. I read Charles Stanley, David Jeremiah,
Uh-huh.
the little Bible book that we have out here, and one called Morning with Jesus.
Ah.
I read all four of those every morning, and then at night I read my Bible, and then another book. Like I just finished one from Robert Jeffers, and I'm starting another one with Robert Jeffers. I've read through my Bible probably 5 to 10 times.
You met Charles Stanley,
Oh yes.
and tell me about that experience.
Well, when Betty and I were young, we started tithing to Charles Stanley, and we got a letter from him to come for dinner at a place right across from the Seattle-Tacoma airport. And we thought, oh boy, this is going to be something where he's going to want money. Because we didn't know anything about him except we'd been watching him on TV. And so we went. There was only about 35 couples there in this room at a motel dining room across from the SeaTac airport. And everybody had dinner, and when they were all through, he stood up and started telling everybody about what the plan was for In Touch, and thanked us all for coming, and that was it. And we thought, wow, this is something. That isn't what we expected at all.
Did you expect to have to write a big old check out?
We thought he was going to ask us to, do whatever. So a few years later, we went on the last Charles Stanley cruise to Alaska. And we were fortunate enough to be able to, people were lined up to sit, and he was sitting at a table, and lined up, fortunate enough to tell him that story, and that we've been tithing to him ever since.
So, Art, you, as I recall, prayed for him every day.
Yes.
And I get to be the beneficiary of what you started, because he's gone on to be with the Lord. And you made a commitment to pray for your crazy pastor, Cliff, every day. What a blessing that is. Tell us about that experience.
Well, I'm not sure. You mean my...
So he prays for me every day.
Oh, yeah,
And
I do. Well, that experience comes from a thing that I saw one time about encouraging your pastor. And the one thing about it is praying for your pastor. And Pastor Cliff let me do it in front of the whole church. I've done it 3 or 4 times now. And then I also include some of the other people like Patty and on and on. But anyway, so I tell people when I'm up there, how many of you have prayed for Pastor Cliff every night? You don't raise your hands. You don't have to raise your hand. But I have prayed for him every single night, and God is my witness. God is my witness that I have prayed for Pastor Cliff every single night. And now, which is just a little addition, not a little addition, it's a big addition, I have prayed for his son for almost a year now, every single night.
And you know, Art, that means a lot to me, because my son is a police officer and in danger. In fact, just the other day, he had to deal with a murder situation, and it can be scary out there. Police are under attack in many communities. So I really thank you for praying not just for your pastor, but your pastor's son. Art, we're getting kind of the signal here that it's time to wrap up. So I'm going to encourage everybody in the church, get to know Art Paulsen and Betty, his wife, because she's fantastic. And They sit down towards the front. Get to know them. They're wonderful friends. And so, friends, until our next Goodness Gracious podcast, broadcast, webcast, armcast, legcast, till we see you again, God bless you, and know that we're praying for you. Thank you, Art, for joining us.
Thank you.